everyone, thanks for joining. We should be here today for the Simplex IT monthly project management webinar. Today's topic is building project teams. So we're going to talk about how to build your project team in Microsoft Project and Project Online. Before we do that though, we just wanted to share a little bit of information with you about Simplex IT. We are a managed service provider and a Microsoft partner. We also have partnerships with Sophos and Cisco, as well as Level Platforms and a few others. We are in good company, we like to say. Should Simplex IT be your IT department? We sure hope so. So if you can answer yes to any one of these questions, please feel free to reach out to us and let's have a chat. We've got some great events coming up for September and October. In September, on September 8th actually, we'll be doing our next office webinar, and we'll talk about Skype for Business and how it ain't just for video calls. So we conduct all of our webinars using Skype for Business. You can see there's a lot more capabilities than just video calling. On September 15th, will be our next project management webinar. So we'll talk about Office 365 Planner. We did this several months ago at the beginning of the summer, and got a lot of great feedback. So we'll be talking about some of the new features of Office 365 Planner there on September 15th. And then on October 5th, we'll talk about business continuity, backups, and disaster recovery in our executive seminar. If you came to our cybersecurity seminar back in July, this is very similar to, format. It'll be in our training room here in the building, and we'll talk about, like I said, business continuity, backups, and disaster recovery. This will be a breakfast seminar, though, a little bit different than our typical lunch and learns, so we'll try and breakfast out for you. So more information on that to come. So let's get started. Let's talk about creating a project team in Microsoft Project. So I didn't create a lot of slides for this. I wanted to be able to walk you through kind of what some of the steps are. So in Project, we have the ability to create what's called a project team. So basically all that is it's saying that of all of the resources, of all of the people in your organization, these are the people that are going to be working on your project. So it's kind of a way of segregating or designating a certain subset of people. And this works out really well in really large organizations when you've got hundreds of resources and you don't want to constantly be looking at all of the resources that aren't working on your project. It also works out really well in some smaller organizations when for the same reason, So even here at Simplex IT, we don't have a lot of resources, but it is nice to only focus on the ones that will be working on our project. So right before this webinar, I just created a new, very simple project. Nothing too involved here. I actually used one of the templates called Simple Project, so that was easy. So here you can see I've got a couple summary tasks and then some subtasks within them. And then I just copy and pasted everything. So really, lines 1 through 13 is the original project, and then I just copy and pasted it just to give us something to work with. Now you'll notice that I have my resource names column here. And whenever I want to assign a resource to a task, I can click on the little drop-down arrow. And if I had already entered a name here, it would appear in the drop-down list. So it sort of builds that list for you. But if you wanted to create a project team before you start the project or even as you're going, a quick and easy way to do that is under the Resource tab, you can select Add Resources. And then I'm just going to select Build Team from Enterprise. And this is going to show me everybody in my Enterprise resource list, which is everybody here at Simplex IT that we used for this example. So this is everybody here. Now you may have 12 people, you may have 1,200 people. It doesn't matter. It's everybody who has access to Microsoft Project or Project Server in your organization or Project Online. So if I say, okay, I want to have Bob's going to be working on this project, Doug, how about Kevin and Patty? And you'll notice that I'm just selecting the resource and I'm clicking Add here in the middle. And all that's doing is moving the resources from the Enterprise Resource list over here on the left to my Project Resources list. So this is saying that this person is going to work on this project. And notice how it says committed here in the booking column. That's basically saying to all the other project managers in your organization that this person is committed to your project. So they are booked for your project. Now there's some ways that we can get into details with booking them kind of part-time, letting them share responsibilities across multiple projects. So we can do that, but for this demonstration, we're just saying that, yep, we're going to make them committed to this project. All right, so these are my project resources. I'm just going to click OK. And now you'll notice when I go back to assign a resource to a task, you'll notice those 4 people are there for me to assign. So this works out really great, especially if you're creating a template for a project. You know, maybe you have different types of templates. You know, you might have IT projects or accounting projects or HR projects. And if you're creating a template for each one of those projects, chances are you'll have different resources working on them. You know, for your HR projects, you'll have people in HR working on them. And for your accounting projects, you'll have people in accounting. So sometimes it's nice to be able to create that project team ahead of time, especially if you're creating templates. So here I'm just going to select Bob, and I'll press enter. And that assigns Bob to task 1 here in my summary tasks. And I can select him again, press enter, and so on. So that just assigns Bob to this task. You'll notice that I have a milestone task. So summary number 1 complete is a milestone. I know that because there's 0-day duration here in the duration column, and there's a little diamond, which is my designated shape for my milestones. So I'm not going to assign a resource to a milestone. Really, there's no work involved in a milestone. It's just basically a visual indicator that shows that you're done with that bit of work, that summary task. So I'm not going to assign a resource. I have in the past though, so if you have somebody that's sort of responsible for ensuring that all the work is done in a summary task, you know, maybe they're the team lead, so they're not actually doing the tasks, but they're responsible for everybody that's working on the tasks. Then in that case, I would assign that person to the milestone task for it to be complete. So so in that example, let's say that Bob was actually doing these 2 tasks, but I was responsible for making sure that they were done and on time and correct and so on. Then I would assign myself to the summary task. But like I said, there's not a lot of work hours involved in milestone tasks. They're basically 0-day duration, so they're just a visual indicator there. If you did want to assign a duration to a task, you can do that. Here I can mark my duration. I just double-clicked on that milestone task, and I'm going to mark my duration as 0.5 hours, let's say. So I'm going to give myself a half an hour to just kind of double-check and make sure everything is done. And then I'm just going to check mark task as milestone down at the bottom here. And click OK. And then I'll make it 0.5 hours here, but still keep it a milestone task. So you can see here I still have my diamond, and it's still a milestone task. The default, and I don't want to get too off track on milestones here, so I apologize. I know we're talking about resources and building teams, but I just wanted to mention the default when you select a task and you make it a 0-day duration or a 0 duration, it does default to be a milestone. But if you want to override that and put time against it, then you just have to double click on it and get into that detail screen and type in your duration and make sure mark as milestone is still checked. So again, to build your project team, very easy. You just click on Add Resources and then select Build Team from Enterprise. This shows you everybody available in your enterprise resource list, and then you just select the ones that will be working on this task, or I'm sorry, on this project, and you add them over to the right. Now, in the event that somebody leaves your organization, you can select them from the right, from your project resources, and just remove them from the list. You can also select to replace somebody. So for example, let's say that Doug is leaving, but Joe Test is his replacement. So now I've selected Joe Test over here on the left, and I've selected Doug on the right, and I'm just going to click replace. And that just replaces Doug with Joe. The only thing I just want to caution you about here is to be careful with work that's currently in progress. So if you've got somebody that's working on a task and they say that they're halfway done with that task, I'm just going to mark this task 50% complete. So here, Bob has already started working on this task. He's 50% complete. If I try to replace him just by removing him here, and let's say adding him to, stop popping up, Bob. And let's say that I just add Joe and remove Bob and click OK, it will warn me that the item has progress reported against it. So it has time reported against it. We already said Bob has already worked 50% of this time, and now we're saying, all right, remove Bob and put Joe on it. And project, although you would assume that project would be smart enough to know that we want to do it kind of from this moment moving forward, it's not. Project kind of looks at this entire task and says, oh, now you want to remove Bob and put Joe. Well, what do you want me to do? Because Bob's already worked on some odd hours on this task. So here I'm just going to say no, I want to leave it as Bob. And I would handle that then in my build team. So here I would go back to my add resources, build team from enterprise, and I would replace, let's replace Bob with Doug. Okay. And now if we do it this way, it'll say that Bob has actuals reported. They'll remain on the team, but their remaining work will be reassigned to Doug. So this is saying, okay, Bob's worked on the task, and that's fine. Now we know that you want to remove him, but he's going to remain on the team, and his work is going to remain reported. So it's going to save all that history, but now moving forward, we're going to assign it to Doug. And I'll say, okay, that's what I want to do. And I'll click OK, and now I have both, forgot I still had Joe selected, that's okay. So now I have all three of them, Bob, Joe, and Doug. So add resources, build team from enterprise. And actually I should remove Joe. So that's the difference there. If I were to just come in here and make the change, the drop down, and change it to somebody else, it's going to remove all that history. And for this example, you think, oh, well, that's not too bad. It's only a 2-day task, and you only said it was 50% complete. So that's not too bad. But if you've got a lot of history assigned to these tasks, then you won't want to lose that. If you've got a 2-year project and somebody's been working on tasks, especially many tasks that roll up into a summary task, you're not going to want to lose that history just because a resource may no longer be working on that project. So here I'm just going to select and create a few more assignments here. You can use the drop-down list as you saw me doing before, or right now I'm just selecting tasks and adding the first letter of each name just to make the task assignment here. You'll notice that on some of these tasks, you'll see that next to each one of our names there's a little square with a color. That's just our availability. So because we're an Office 365 user, this pulls all of our availability from Skype and Outlook. So here you can see that Bob's busy. He's in a meeting until noon, or several meetings, but he's available at noon. Here you can see that I'm busy. I'm presenting. So it actually knows that I'm sharing my screen with you here. And that I am free at noon. So that's because Bob and I both have a meeting after this webinar, and that'll take us up until noon. So it is kind of nice as a project manager to be able to see your resources and their availability. Because if I were in this project and I were assigning people, I may see that somebody is not available, and maybe I just want to send them a quick message and say, hey, are you available? Or I haven't seen you online, or I just need you to update this task real quick. So it is quite handy there. Let me just add a few more task assignments here, and then I want to show you leveling. Show you task leveling here. All right. So I just wanted to point out, if you look very closely at this project, you'll notice that I have what's called over-allocated resources. So I've got resources that are scheduled to do too much in one day. One jumps out at me right away, and it's this one here in the Gantt chart. We've got Bob scheduled to do a couple things at the same time. A good way to be able to identify your over-allocated resources is by looking at the resource sheet. So here I can look at the resource sheet, and I can see that I'm actually over-allocated. I must have been looking at that Gantt chart wrong. So this resource is over-allocated. You can see that I'm over-allocated. That basically means that I'm scheduled to do 2 tasks at the same time. Now I can do 2 tasks at the same time. I just can't do them 100% of my availability. So I would have to split it and do 50-50. And I didn't set it up that way because I just took the regular 100% availability so that I could show you over-allocated resources. But the reason I point this out is because it happens a lot, and sometimes we don't understand why it's happening. So if you assign people to tasks and they're overlapping tasks, we've got a lot to do in one day. Sometimes this happens when we create tasks and we make them an hour, and really they're like 5 minutes. So you've got 40 tasks to do in a day, but really they're just quick 5-minute things. Sign off on this, or email that. So sometimes we don't want to get into the level of granularity that we need, by saying this will only take 5 minutes, but then we end up with a bunch of over-allocated resources. And over-allocated resources to Microsoft Project really doesn't do anything. They just show up in red and bold letters and in certain views, but they don't really change the functionality of Project at all. But it is a good idea to keep an eye on it, because if you constantly have the same resources that are over-allocated, it could be a good indicator that you are assigning your resources too much work. And a good way to level that out is by using your resource leveling. So here, if I select level resource, I'm going to say, okay, who do I want to level? And I'm just going to level myself because I was the only one that was over-allocated. So this is going to attempt to take all the times that I'm over-allocated, all the times I'm scheduled to do too much. This is going to take all of that work and redistribute it so that I'm not allocated to do too much. So I'll select myself and I'll click level now. Now the thing I do not like about leveling resources is unless you have a very good eye, it's hard to catch what it did. So here, it basically just created a split in my work. It told me to start this task. I split this task because I'm stopping to do this task down here. And then when this task is done, I'm going to go back up and finish this task. Okay. That was a pretty simple one. But sometimes it's hard to tell what project did for you. And sometimes it'll do things that you might not want it to do. Maybe you don't want split tasks. Maybe you want somebody to finish a task before another task can start. So I like the leveling, but I always just say to use it with caution and be really, really, really aware of the changes that it made. I wish that there was a summary that would pop up afterwards to just say, hey, this is what I did. I split this task and this task number was reassigned and what have you, but there isn't. We do have some leveling options though. So for example, before I leveled, I could say, maybe only level within available Slack. That means that, only move things around when there's nothing else going on. Slack time is when there's nothing going on. I can check leveling can adjust individual assignments on a task. So here, by leaving this checked, leveling can adjust individual assignments, That means that if I'm overworked, it can take a task from me and assign it to somebody that's underworked or underassigned. So it could take one of my tasks and assign it to Joe Test. Well, project doesn't know if Joe Test is a programmer or a accountant. So, there's no rhyme or reason for how those tasks are being reassigned. So be very, very careful with that one. I usually will leave that unchecked when I'm doing leveling. The third one here, leveling can create splits. That's what you see here. So it created a split for us. So if you don't want that to happen, you can uncheck that. And then level resources within the proposed booking type. That's just if you want to, assign resources within the committed projects. And then manually level scheduled tasks is if you want to manually do that yourself. All right, so just to recap, we talked about how to add a project team, how to create a project team. So I'm just going to add resources and build team from Enterprise. And we're selecting the team members that we want to work on this project, and we're adding them over to the right-hand side. Click OK, and then they're available for us to use in your resource list. We talked about how to level resources and how to find overallocated resources. Remember, that was by looking in your resource sheet and seeing any resources that were red and bold. And since I already leveled my overallocated resources, you'll see that I don't have any red bold resources here. And I leveled resources by going under the level resource option here in the toolbar at the top. If you wanted to level all resources, you could select level all. And then of course you have your leveling options that we looked at. So these are all of the leveling options that you can use to control how your resources are being leveled. All right. Keep in mind that if you want to replace a resource that has work already associated with it, like this task already is 50% complete, so keep in mind there that you probably want to use replace in your build team option. That will save any historic time associated with that task, and it will replace that resource with the new resource moving forward. If you just make the change here in project, then it will not save any of the historic activity moving forward. It'll wipe it out. So most of the time we don't want to do that. You want to save that historic activity, so we want to do that under the add resources and the build team options. All right, that's all I have for you on building a project team. Please join us next month. We'll talk about Office 365 Planner. If you haven't looked at Planner at all, it's a really neat tool. Basically, very much like Trello or any one of the project tools where you can create lists of things to do. I've had a lot of fun using it here at Simplex IT. We've created some smaller projects and it works out really well. So can't wait to show that to you next month. And we'll be doing that on September 15th. All right, thanks for joining everyone, and we'll see you next month. Bye.